Okay. Few people trickling in. So welcome everyone back to culinary medicine. So this new series is going to be called Culinary Health. So my name is Jessica, and I'm the executive chef here at UCI Samueli Integrative Health Institute. Some of you might have remembered me from back at Campus Recreation. So here's my new home. Before we start though, I want to review a few Zoom housekeeping items. We are recording this session, and after the session, we'll post the webinar on our website along with the recipes to download. Everyone will remain mute to limit the distractions during the presentation, and after the presentation, I'll moderate a Q&A session. Please take advantage of the Q&A feature to address any questions to our panelists. So, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, and our speaker today is Dr. Shipra Bansal. Dr. Bansal completed her training at Harbor UCLA in 2008. She's dual boarded in family medicine and lifestyle medicine and a certified clinical health coach. Dr. Bansal has a rich background in medical education, program development, and primary care. She served as the assistant professor of family medicine, as well as director of osteopathic and lifestyle medicine at A.T. Still University, where she led the implementation of a fully integrated lifestyle medicine curriculum. Since 2014, Dr. Bansal has led group visits for patients with metabolic syndrome and other inflammatory conditions to adopt a plant-forward eating pattern in order to stabilize and or reverse disease. Based on her work at her prior FQHC, she has published successful outcomes in metabolic parameters. Dr. Bansal is a family physician who enjoys cultivating relationships with her patients and making healthy lifestyle, particularly nutrition, accessible to all populations. And so Dr. Bansal will be presenting what is culinary medicine. And then afterwards, I'll demonstrate a stuffed pepper, and Dr. Bansal will engage the audience with your Q&A feature. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Shipra Bansal.
Thank you so much, Chef Jess, for that very nice introduction. I appreciate it. Let me share my screen and we will get started with the presentation. Okay, great. So welcome everybody. I hope this is going to be a very useful session to you, and please, ask any questions. We want to really make sure this is as engaging as possible. Okay, so just briefly, what are the objectives for today? We're going to define what culinary medicine is, explain why it's so important for health today, and then discuss different ways to maximize nutrient content in foods during preparation, as well as identify different food combinations to maximize nutrient absorption in our bodies. So let's start with, what is culinary medicine? Culinary medicine is not nutrition, dietetics, or preventive, integrative, or internal medicine, nor is it the culinary arts or food science. It does not have a single dietary philosophy. It does not reject prescription medication. It is not simply about good cooking, flavors, or aromas, nor is it solely about the food matrices in which micronutrients, phytonutrients, and macronutrients are found. So that's a lot of what it's not. What exactly is it? It is a new evidence-based field in medicine that blends the art of food and cooking with the science of medicine. Culinary medicine is aimed at helping people reach good personal medical decisions about accessing and eating high-quality meals that help prevent and treat disease and restore well-being. And why is it so important? Why has it come up now? This is a graph from an article that was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 2018. And it lists here the risk factors responsible for mortality. And you can see here, for the first time, actually, dietary risks have now become the #1 risk factor for mortality in the US, and that even surpasses tobacco use. So it's a huge area and it's a huge area and a huge opportunity for us to be able to use culinary medicine in order to not only prevent disease, but to treat and even reverse it. And you'll notice that under dietary risks, there's tobacco use, which is still very significant and needs a lot of attention. But under that, there's systolic blood pressure, BMI, fasting glucose, total cholesterol. All of these are highly impacted by our dietary choices. And so when you put it together, diet is foundational in chronic disease care. When we look at heart disease, which is our #1 cause of death in the US and has been actually for decades now, this becomes even more evident, the role and the importance of nutrition. So what you're seeing here are the 7 different factors that the CDC looks at in terms of what are the contributors to heart disease and how are we doing. Where it's red, we're not doing so great. Yellow is doing okay, and green is we're doing pretty good. So if you look here in smoking, overall, we're doing pretty good. Body mass index, maybe not so great. Could use some help. Physical activity also. In the healthy diet score, we're having some trouble. But we're doing okay in total cholesterol, blood pressure, and diabetes. So you see more green. Going back to the healthy diet, however, you see that the majority of us, whether we're in the 20 to 49 age group or the 50 plus, we're in the red. There is some green here, if you take a look, but it is a very small percentage, less than 1% of those of us who are over the age of 50, and even less than that of us who are younger, who have healthy diets. Very briefly, this talk really isn't about what is a healthy diet, but I did want to share the Harvard's healthy eating plate. I think the take-home point here for me, and one that I emphasize with my patients, is to make sure we're eating enough fruits and vegetables and that they are at least half of our plate. Only about 10% of Americans eat enough fruits and vegetables in a day. And that is 2.5 cups of vegetables and 2 cups of fruit a day. So that would be the one take home that I really would emphasize to everybody. That is absolutely non-controversial in the dietary discourse. Okay, so let's move on now. We talked a little bit about what is culinary medicine, why is it important, how do we actually utilize it? So we're going to be going over different ways to prep your food to maximize nutrition, and then different ways to combine it as well. First of all, chopping. So culinary medicine starts really at the very, very basic level. Chopping and chewing actually our food in certain foods can really increase their nutritional content. So when it comes to cruciferous vegetables, which are broccoli, cauliflower, kale, cabbage, collards, this is a whole family of mostly greens that are very well studied and known to help prevent a variety of different cancers. Now, with these vegetables, they're healthy no matter how you eat them. So I don't want anybody to stress about how to make sure you're really, making it worthwhile to eat these foods. No matter how you eat them, they are healthy. But if you want to go the extra step and really optimize their health promoting properties, chopping these vegetables before you cook them can really help. So the image that you see on the right is a cell. So if you take, a piece of broccoli and you go microscopically into one cell, you'll see that there are just different compounds here. There's something called myrosinase and glucosinolates. Basically, when we chew or when we cut, those two can mix and they can form a compound called sulforaphane. This sulforaphane is what actually gives it the property of being able to help prevent cancer. And so the best way to maximize sulforaphanes are to actually chop it. If you're going to eat it, chop, a little bit smaller than you might normally do so, and then leave it out for at least 10 minutes. But I've seen some places say ideally about 40 minutes in order for this chemical reaction to happen so that the sulforaphane can be produced. Once it's produced, it is absolutely fine to heat it and cook it. It will not be destroyed. But if you heat it before it's had time to be produced, it will not be produced. Okay, so that's one example of chopping. Another example of chopping is in the allium family, which is our onions, our garlic, our leeks. And they also have they have some sulfur compounds that have been found to be anti-inflammatory and associated with reduced cardiovascular risk, and also some reduction in specific digestive cancers. Similar to the cruciferous family, when we cut through the cell walls, they produce another healthy compound called diallyl thiosulfonate, which I'll call DT. And so when you chop your garlic, you want to chop it fine if you're really wanting to maximize the production of this. Similarly, when you're eating, you want to be able to chew these, chew as a little bit more in order to maximize how many cells you break. This one, if you let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes, that compound DT is formed, and you'll get the benefits of the garlic or onion or whatever you're cutting. The next one I want to share is chewing. So similar to chopping, when we chew our leafy greens, we actually are really helping to produce a compound called nitric oxide. Nitric oxide, some of you might be kind of familiar with this, because if you take any sort of a nitrate, we prescribe nitrates to our patients actually for who have angina or who have kind of some chest pain when they exert themselves. So sometimes we call it isosorbide nitrate. So we give that to them so they can take the pill and produce this compound, nitric oxide. Nitric oxide then helps to dilate our blood vessels and allow more blood to come through. So for people with chest pain, it can be very helpful. In addition to taking the pill, or in lieu of taking the pill, we can also chew our leafy greens. And our body has a very intricate cascade that it goes through, where it actually converts the nitrates in our dark leafy greens into nitric oxide in our body and helps to vasodilate our blood vessels. So chew your greens, eat a lot of greens for the nitrates. They are most concentrated in dark leafy greens, and then chew them well. A lot of times I get the question, now, should I cook my food or should I eat it raw to gain the most benefit out of it? My answer is that you should eat a variety of cooked and raw foods. So we know that cooking can destroy several of the B vitamins, and vitamin C in particular is very susceptible. As a general rule, boiling causes more nutrient loss than steaming or sauteing, but it's not always the case. So I would say if you are going to cook, steaming and sauteing in general is a good way to help preserve some of the nutrients. Microwaving, interestingly, for most foods is one of the best ways to preserve nutrients. A fruit also contains digestive enzymes, and these can be destroyed with cooking. So we do want to be careful when we cook, because we can destroy some of the nutritive properties. At the same time, cooking helps to break down these cell walls. It helps to release nutrients, and it helps to make some nutrients more available to us for absorption. One of these categories is carotenoids, which are phytonutrients. And the picture here are examples of different carotenoids. Carotenoids are incredibly beneficial to our overall health. They include not just the beta carotene that most of you have heard about, but lycopene we get from tomatoes, lutein, which has gained a lot of attention in the media recently for eye health. So it's a broad category. And when we actually, sorry about that, when we cook, these compounds become more bioavailable, and so it's beneficial. So the bottom line is get a mix of cooked and raw foods in your diet, and that way you will have the widest array of nutrients available to you. Next one that I really like to emphasize is eat the skin on your produce. So one of the best things you can do is definitely eating as close to the skin as possible, if not the skin. And this includes the pit. For example, in oranges, the white part that surrounds each of the slices of the orange, that is also protective. And these are very high in phytonutrients. So phytonutrients are a plant's immune system. And so they're concentrated towards the outside where the plant is most vulnerable to attack, because the plant really needs to protect that seed inside, right? Especially in the fruits. And so what it's going to do is put all of its defenses towards the outside. Additionally, the skin has much needed fiber. So not only are you getting the majority of the fiber, you're actually getting the majority of the phytonutrients by eating the skin. Along the same lines, you want to eat whole grains whenever possible. Now, here is a picture of, on the image of grain anatomy. When we eat the whole grain, we get that germ from the inside, the endosperm, which is mostly starch, but we get the bran. And as you all know, bran is very high in fiber. But it is also high in a lot of other nutrients. So you don't want to miss out on the whole grain. When you get a processed grain, that bran is taken off and all you're getting is the endosperm and the germ. And that's some of the nutrients, but also a lot of starch. And so when you look at the figure here, when we eat, this is particularly for whole wheat. The green bars are the nutrients that you're getting if you eat 100% whole wheat. If you get a white flour, something made out of white flour or an enriched grain, well, that means that the bran is taken off, then you're getting the red bars. So you'll see that you're going to really miss out on the vast majority of the nutrients if you get a processed grain, and then this one particularly whole wheat versus the whole grain. The yellow bars, if you're interested, those are the ones when you have enriched products. You'll see a lot of times it'll say enriched wheat. Then they add in those 5 nutrients in high levels, but you're still missing out on the rest of them. Those are not enriched. Okay, very briefly, I'm going to go into soaking and sprouting. Soaking is a nice way, and sprouting, to increase mineral absorption. Basically, you may have heard of phytates. Phytates are sometimes considered anti-nutrients. They actually have a lot of healthful properties, but they also can modestly prevent the absorption of some nutrients like zinc. And so by sprouting and soaking, we can actually degrade some of these phytates and increase absorption of nutrients. This is just an introductory slide, so I'm not going to be reading all of this, but the take home with mussels, organs, and broth is that processed meat now has been definitively classified as a class 1 carcinogen by the American Institute for Cancer Research and the World Cancer Research Fund. If possible, it should be absolutely eliminated, okay? It is the highest level of carcinogen. Red meat, processed meat also has about 700 studies showing that. Red meat has about 400 studies, but they're not as definitive. So it's considered a class 2 carcinogen instead of a class 1 carcinogen, and the data is strongest with colorectal cancer. So it's best to minimize consumption of red meat. White meat, which includes poultry and fish, is best used when it's cooked at low temperatures because that will prevent the formation of more carcinogens. Many of you have probably heard that eating skinless chicken is the best because it removes total fat by about 50%. Organ meats do have high contents of vitamins, minerals, and iron, but they're also very high in cholesterol and saturated fat, so they should be absolutely minimized. And then finally, bone broth is one that was very popular in the last few years. However, there's little data in the literature on actual health benefits or concerns. One of the areas that I do get concerned about with bone broth is that bones naturally store lead and other heavy metals. And when we cook the bones, those can be released. So we don't have good data one way or the other, but I would be careful with a lot of bone broth consumption. All right, so another take home is how do you combine foods to maximize nutrition? Remember, we talked about the carotenoids, the lycopene, the lutein, the beta carotene. Those are actually fat-soluble nutrients. And so they are best absorbed by cooking, as we talked about, but then also with just a little bit of fat in your dish. So that could mean sprinkling some nuts over your food. If you want to use a very small amount of oil, but I would keep the oil minimal, or some avocado, that can help absorption of the carotenoids. Similarly, greens have a lot of phytonutrients that are fat soluble, so you want to use a little bit of fat. When you take iron, you want to, if you take it with a vitamin C product, then, or a food rich in vitamin C, that'll increase your absorption of the iron. And then finally, turmeric, which is known for its anti-inflammatory properties. If you're having turmeric in your diet, you always want to use just a pinch of black pepper because that will enhance the absorption of turmeric by about 20 times. And so that can be very, very beneficial. So I'm going to round off here and kind of close up. Thomas Edison has been given credit for saying the doctor of the future will cure and prevent disease with nutrition. And I think that time has actually come. We're seeing the absolute need to utilize culinary medicine in order to improve our chronic disease burden. Culinary medicine uses the powerful science of food to optimize health outcomes. And now with diet being the top cause of premature mortality in the US, culinary medicine is an indispensable tool in preventing, treating, and reversing chronic disease. Okay, so that's it on my end. I'm gonna stop sharing and I'm gonna hand it back over to, well, there's a couple of questions here. So I'll go ahead and I'll let you, Chef Jess, I'll let you take over and moderate. Is that good?
Oh, all right. So yeah, so the two questions, you can type the answer, or if I stop, you can feel free. But if everyone doesn't know, there are two questions in the Q&A. One of them is what types of rice are healthier? And then the other question is the best ways to wash fruits and vegetables. And so I'll let her answer that, but I'm going to start really quick, not really quick, but, oh, wrong one. Hold on. Wrong camera. There we go. Okay. So many cameras. Sorry. I'm going to get this right. First time doing this here. All right. So we are going to be making an avocado mousse, a tofu mousse, as well as a quinoa and amaranth stuffed pepper. So we're going to start off with a carrot sauce that's going to go with the actual stuffed quinoa. So you got four carrots. And again, these are organic, so I'm not going to peel them, and they don't look very pretty, but that's okay. If it's pretty, I usually say then it's probably not organic. So we're going to use the peel for this, and we're going to roast it. So we're going to chop them up just to be bite size. It's roughly chopped. And you know what I realized would be good for this is if you ever have leftover carrot like if you have a party, it's the holidays. And so you have all those little carrots sitting around, those baby carrots, even the different colored ones, like the tri-colored ones, you could use that for this. And so this is a great way to use your waste. If you like to peel your carrots, maybe keep your carrot peels and make a sauce out of it afterwards. We're going to take all these carrots. One more. And I have a new knife that I like, everyone. So if you are interested in a nice sharp knife that I've already cut myself twice on recently, they're not cheap, but they're not Hinkle or Wusthof expensive either. It's a company called Mac, and they're Japanese. Can't put them in the dishwasher, but they're great. So I've got my carrots, and then I'm also going to take one onion, and I'm just going to quarter it. You can peel it if you want, but you don't need to. You can peel it afterwards. So I cut it in half one way. I'm going to cut it in half. So it's going to be quartered. And then I'm going to take 4 cloves of garlic. Get this apart. This is one of those times when I do usually grab a towel because it's just too hard to get to the middle of. And based on what Dr. Bonsall was saying, well, we're not chopping up the garlic, but if you were going to chop up the garlic, do that ahead of time. Give it a good whack just to separate it, not to actually mash it, just to separate it. And then the cloves will come apart. So I just want 4 because I actually want to keep the skin on these. I'm going to take that. Take a little bit of oil, avocado oil, and then I'm going to toss that around just like that. Grab a sheet pan. I'm going to lay it on there. And I'm going to put my onion on one side. And then my garlic cloves too. And that's going to go into a 400, 375 degree oven, and you're going to roast it. And you're going to roast it just until the carrots get nice and soft. Okay. So with the power of the already done. So you can see the carrots really, really shrivel up. Okay. And then the onion, the skin comes off pretty much. So you can just peel off that top layer if you want. With the garlic, what you're going to do is you can go in and either squeeze out the cloves or just peel them off. Now, the reason why I roasted the garlic as opposed to actually mincing it and chopping it is I don't want the garlic to overpower everything. So it's just a very, very muted garlic flavor with a little bit of sweetness to it. They're a lot easier to squeeze out when they're warm too. And think you can make this sauce ahead of time and just put it on everything. You might as well, if you're doing this, do a whole head and just save the extra garlic for something else. No need to take them apart if you don't want to. All right, so I've got my garlic. Now I'm going to put that in my food processing. So I'm going to do a lot of food processing today. Got that. Got my carrot. My onion, I am going to trim off that root because there's no need for that. It's just nice because it keeps everything together for you. And you can use a red onion, white onion, really any kind of onion that you want. And then we're going to add a little bit of veggie stock. So I'm going to add 1 cup to start. You can use however much you want, but this is another great way to add nutrients to your diet. So if you were cooking with, if you were boiling your vegetables or you have extra skin, you can keep that liquid and you can use it in something else. Or you can use to make a veggie broth out of it later on. I'm going to be loud for a second. it. So you can take this sauce and you can heat it up, or you can keep it at room temperature because everything was roasted already. Then make our bell pepper. So our bell pepper, I'm just checking questions. Our bell pepper is stuffed with quinoa and amaranth. I want to show you the two. So those are what they look like. This one's quinoa, so it's a little bit bigger. And then this one is amaranth. It's a tiny, tiny little one. Amaranth, significantly old, not significantly, but an older grain, Aztec, than quinoa. Quinoa is used more today, though. Now, this is the reason. This amaranth is significantly nuttier. So it has kind of, I don't want to say bitter, but it is nuttier. So it overpowers sometimes. And so we add the two. What's funny is they're comparable. Quinoa is actually from the amaranth family. Now let's talk about nutrients between the two. Neither one of these are actual grains. They're called pseudo grains. They are actually seeds. And so they're seeds on a plant. And if you look, quinoa grows really easily and you can grow it on your own. I'm going to show you something really fun. So if you take quinoa, amaranth has the same thing. I'm going to pour some water over it. This is what you do. When you buy quinoa and amaranth, one of the complaints people always say is that it tastes bitter when they cook it. The outside of quinoa and amaranth has saponin. I hope I said that right. I might not have. But it's like a soap product. And it creates bubbles. It's on the outside of it actually to prevent bugs and birds from eating it. So what happens when you wash it, if you've ever noticed, if you keep spinning it around, what you'll notice is it'll actually produce bubbles. And so doing it enough. If you run it under the water, it does it a lot more too. And I'm using cold table here. So you see these bubbles will form. You want to rinse this underwater until you don't see any more bubbles. That's how I tell. And that really helps take away that bitterness. So I'm going to keep rinsing and washing it out until those bubbles disappear. And it's really important because if you don't like quinoa, the last thing you want to do is try quinoa without it having been rinsed, because it doesn't taste very good. So I like to use my Instant Pot when I make quinoa or amaranth because it takes 3 minutes. Not a true 3 minutes, but a 3 minutes in the sense that I turn it on and then I put it up for 3 minutes and then I just let it naturally release. Takes about 20 minutes altogether. It makes the most perfect quinoa and amaranth. If you don't want to, you can do it on the stove too. That's what it looks like when it's done. And then you can go in and you can fluff it. I didn't add any oil. You can if you want it. I don't really find that the Instant Pot is pretty good at keeping everything not nonstick, but workable. Now I'm going to take this and I'm going to add all my other cool ingredients inside. So what do I have? Homemade black beans. So black beans don't need to be soaked. Black beans are one of the few beans that you can actually cook pretty easily right on the stove. If again, Instant Pot if you want. So I've got the black beans in there. I have some corn. Now, corn is something I need you to stop buying out of season. And try to buy organic corn if possible. And so frozen corn is actually really good. You just want to make sure that it's organic, because if it's not in season, probably not great. All right, it's not very flavorful too. Salsa. So this is where you can kind of cheat sometimes. Salsa is a great addition to add to things to give it flavor without all that extra work. If you want to use your own homemade salsa, go for it. Then we have our spices. So we have garlic powder, because we didn't add any garlic in here. Just garlic powder, smoked paprika to give it that smokiness. And then I have cumin. And then I also have nutritional yeast. Okay. So the nutritional yeast will be what really gives it that cheesy flavor that you might want from a dish like this. Usually a stuffed pepper will have cheese like sprinkled on top. It won't have that. So for quinoa versus amaranth, your quinoa has 8 grams of protein per cup versus your amaranth, which is actually 9 grams of protein per cup. But for iron, quinoa has 3 grams versus amaranth that has 5 grams. And so they're comparable, but amaranth beats it to a certain degree. Amaranth also has 22% of your B6. And so quinoa doesn't, because quinoa only has 18%. I'm throwing all these numbers at you. But what quinoa has that amaranth doesn't have is the thiamine and the riboflavin. So if you want those two, then you better stick to the quinoa. Or do what we did, which is combine the two. So I've got 2 bell peppers. You're going to need 4. Bell peppers are one of the things that we do say, try to buy organic if possible. You'll hear me say that because there's just a few things that if you can, try to. We're going to cut through the middle. So I'm actually not going to cut it this way. I'm not going to do a full, if you wanted to, you can, but what happens when you stuff them like a whole one, they don't cook through all the way. So I want to make sure this cooks through all the way. So I'm going to show you what I do. I cut it in half, open it up. And then I'll take my knife and just kind of pop out the seed. And then if you want, you can take your knife and just cut the pith. But Dr. Bonsall was saying we eat the pith. So keep it around, add it in a salad if you want. It's really interesting because I've been interested in this whole eating the peel thing. Kiwis are the ones that I've learned recently that you really should be eating the skin of. And pith too is where bitterness is. And like I like to tell people that that's a flavor that we really need to start learning how to eat again. Bit more. Yep. I guess you could do little baby bell peppers too and have like appetizers with this stuffed. That would be pretty good too.
Chef Jess, if I can add in there with the pith, sometimes what I'll do, because I agree they're bitter, I'll
Yeah.
just like chop it up into small pieces and then I'll put it in the stuffing so that you don't really notice it very well. So very
Yeah.
much. And that way you still get the nutrient value.
That's smart. But is that something like any kind of pith is usually related to the flavor of bitterness, correct?
As in my experience, yes.
Yeah.
But a lot of those phytonutrients are bitter.
Yeah.
And so, but they're so good for us. So it's a balance, or, and it's not an all or nothing thing. Sometimes if I'm really not in the mood for some bitter, I'll just do half of it so I don't really taste it, or at least get every little bit that you can.
And what's interesting is in the restaurant world, the one thing that takes away bitterness is salt. So in the kitchen, that's why they salt so much sometimes, because they're actually trying to hide certain flavors like bitterness. So if something is salty, people tend to add more salt than needed. Right, so we're going to stuff these. And then you can get a baking sheet. And what I wanted to show you is that sometimes these bell peppers aren't very steady, or they're not like sitting up on their own and so on. So you can create almost a boat. We're going to create a boat. You're going to grab your cookie sheet. And it doesn't have to be a big one. It can be a small one. What I want you to do is I want you to grab foil and almost like a long line of it. And you're going to create a boat, like a bed almost, for your bell pepper. And that way it can lay on there. It's not going to stick on there and it's not going to topple over either. So it gives it a little bit more room to bake too. And I'm gonna do that, all the bell peppers. And again, that the B6, sorry, the nutritional yeast in there really makes this dish. So you are not if you've never tried nutritional yeast, I suggest you go and buy some. You can find it a lot now. And don't buy the ones that say fake Parmesan cheese or whatever, because they have other things added to them. Try just regular, just nutritional yeast and see how you like it. So I'm going to pop that in the oven. You're going to bake it for about 20 minutes covered. And then you're going to remove the top and then put it under the broiler. And then you've got these beautiful stuffed peppers ready to go. And then you're going to serve it with the carrot sauce right on top. And I'm fine. So that's for the stuffed bell peppers. Any questions on that? Put a little bit of the sauce right on top, right before you serve it. And what's fun is you could use like a green bell pepper, just because it'll play with the colors a little bit more. Just you don't have any green in this dish right now. You have a lot of carotenoids. I can never say that word right. Okay. Let's make dessert. The dessert is one of those things I feel like people not cheat themselves, or they just don't have because they're afraid that it's sugar, it's extra, it's sweet. There are so many new products out there right now that have made eating dessert a little bit easier and healthier. So I'm going to show you two different types of mousses. One's an avocado mousse and the other's a tofu mousse. So soy tofu is a complete protein. It contains all of the 9 essential amino acids. The problem is people don't like eating tofu. I love tofu, so I don't know why people don't like it, but it's there's two types that you can buy: silken tofu and regular tofu. They are different. When we use when we're making these desserts, or you're making smoothies, or you're making cheesecake, cheese for certain desserts, we tend to use silken tofu. So I want to show you what silken tofu. Silken tofu is this. I like the ones in the containers like this, but some people don't. It's not pressed. So what ends up happening is it comes to us. It's very, very smooth and creamy. Now, what that means about this tofu versus other tofu, so this is what it looks like. So it's very, very smooth. You can't see the curds, you can't see the whey, you can't see anything. So how they make this is they don't press it. They pretty much cook it in that and then they serve it like that. So you can use it if you can think of anything that needs cream or anything that needs something smooth like that. This is then lower in fat, lower in calories, but then also lower in protein, lower in the other items that you would normally find with tofu. But it is a good way to get it into your diet if you don't like tofu. So we're going to add tofu and then maple syrup, real maple syrup. You can use honey too if you want, or you can even go and use the Lakanto monk fruit sweetened syrup. So to really eliminate all the sugar. You can use a food processor or a blender. Doesn't really make a difference. And I find this avocado mousse is a little bit easier to handle. I mean, sorry, the tofu mousse is a little bit easier to handle than the avocado mousse. You're not, you can really taste, if you're worried about tasting the things that aren't naturally in mousse. And then we have good old chocolate. So I have a pot of water here, and it's on there as a double boiler. I like double boiling my chocolate just because I'm used to it. There is absolutely nothing wrong with using your microwave. Your microwave does it beautifully. 30-second intervals, no issue at all. I don't necessarily like people doing this if you're not comfortable working with chocolate. And the reason is if that water touches any of that chocolate seizes up and it gets all nasty. It just separates and looks bad. The cocoa and the fat separate. So I'm not going to do that. I'm going to add it in just like this. So I don't like using, I'm just advising if you guys are uncomfortable with chocolate, use the microwave. Don't do it over a double boiler. You might just get water in it and then it won't be good. The other thing about chocolate these days, they aren't all sweetened with sugar anymore. Sprouts makes a monk fruit sweetened sugar. Most of places make a monk fruit sweetened sugar too. So you can use that as opposed to regular. And you do use dark chocolate, and the reason is because it's higher in calories. There we go. Then you've got this nice silky mousse that you can do. If you wanted to, you can blend that for even longer and it'll smooth out even more. So the avocado mousse does not need to be refrigerated. The tofu mousse does need to be refrigerated. You could eat it like this, but it tastes a little bit better firmed up. So for people who have kids who you might want to start eating tofu or trying to get tofu into their diet, there are a lot of kids that are vegetarians, but are on a diet of, I feel like French fries. And so if you need a vegetarian kind of dessert that's actually healthy, you can try it and make this. And I'll show you, I'll have pictures at the end. We'll put on the website of what it looks like all plated up. But you can put coconut shavings on top of that. Can really go all out. Okay, so let's make an avocado mousse now. So avocados, this is the best way. You know those really ugly avocados you have at home that you know are still good, but they won't look good inside of a guacamole because they'll be a little bit brown. This is the perfect recipe. Okay, so got 2 avocados. Doesn't matter what size. Again, this is one of those things where you can play around with it. For some of these recipes, you might need more sugar. You might need more X, Y, and Z. It's up to you. Okay. I have cut myself a lot, like I said, and it's actually from the avocado. And I told myself I would never do this, but I have been doing it. And it's because I have a sharp knife. So I want to show you a couple things. First of all, when you cut an avocado, let the knife do the work. So go around. Okay, go around it. And then twist and open. This is the #1 accident that most people see. So there's a lot of this that goes on. And a lot of people hurt themselves. That's not how I hurt myself. I'll show you what I did. But stop doing this. Put your avocado down. Okay. Put this hand behind your back so that you're not tempted to use it. Take your knife. Look at where the seed is. Hold your knife. Remember, pinch your blade. Put your fingers around your knife. Aim and then whack. Okay. You should pick it up and then you should be able to twist it out. Now, this part, a lot of people are also freaked out about. Go to the side of a trash can, a bowl, or something like your sink, and kind of squish it off, I guess, or just kind of use the edge to help you take it off. So I'll do it again. So again, we're going to go around gently, slowly, let the knife do the work. Comes off. I can tell this one is going to be harder to get out. So it might take a couple times. So I'm going to aim, back, hand behind my back, aim. Oh, aimed incorrectly. But, oh, see, that doesn't want to come out. One more time. Twist off. Okay. Sorry. Tempted to do that. This is how I cut myself. I put this in my hand and went in like that. Don't do that. What you can do is actually peel backwards. So you can actually go around an avocado and peel it. Now, Dr. Bonsall, can you eat avocado skin? Or what can you do with avocado skin?
I have not found a use for avocado skin yet.
I do know that there is an Indian recipe for banana peel chutney. And so I've seen that. And so I've always interested in peels and what you can do with peels.
Yeah, I think there is so much nutrition. In fact, if you think about an orange, not that, most people are going to eat orange peels, but actually 70% of the vitamin C is in the peel, not in the actual orange. And so, and again, vitamin C is one of those phytonutrients that helps to protect the plant. And it just kind of helps make it less appetizing or appealing for a predator or a pest to come. So as much as you can, and I like what you're doing with the avocado, because you can, by peeling it, sometimes we take off so much of the edge, but you're actually minimizing taking off the edge, and that really helps increase phytonutrients as well.
I think with the avocado, people just see the ugly parts and then they think they can't add it on because it's ugly. And I just wish people would stop doing that. Ugly produce there's nothing wrong with ugly produce. All right. So we've got, again, our maple. And then I'm using soy milk today. And then we've got more chocolate. And then this is the best part about this recipe. You know all that raw cacao powder that you have in your freezer or in your pantry, and you're like, well, I heard heat does something to it, so I'm not going to use it. You can use it in this, or you can use regular cocoa powder. So the difference between cocoa and cacao is this. Cocoa powder, the stuff that's like the Hershey stuff, has just been, it's still a fermented bean, and it's roasted. Both of them are cacao and cocoa, but cocoa is processed at a higher temperature. So if you think about it, that fermentation process that both of them went through, one is treated at a higher temperature than the other. There isn't very big scientific data behind whether or not it does detriment the benefits of it, but I just thought I would tell you that is the biggest difference between cocoa and cacao is the temperature at which it's made. All right, and then so we got a little bit more. Can't go wrong with more dark chocolate. And dark chocolate, on that note, is then also higher in cocoa, cacao. So like the higher properties. And so when you talk about milk chocolates and all of those things, those just have higher amounts of sugar and dairy in them then. So you always want to go for the darker stuff. And you go. You have a beautiful mousse. And after it's been refrigerated and everything, this is what your tofu mousse will look like. So if you look, doesn't just a little bit, okay? And this is what your avocado one is. So I just want to show you the two difference in colors too. Obviously one was tofu based and one is avocado based. And this one does have extra cocoa powder added into it, but this one is significantly richer than this. This is avocado. So just to give you a variety of different textures and different flavors. Ooh. That's a really interesting question. I'm just looking at the Q&A because that's all I have for you today. Thank you for coming too. Excited to see everyone again and to start these back up. So keep your eye out. But that was a very, very interesting question.
Chef Jess, there's one question here I was saving for you.
Yes.
I thought you might have more info than me, and it's advising on the proper way to microwave food.
Ooh. Okay. So the main thing about microwaving food that I can tell you, like advise on the proper way, is that it needs to have liquid. So whatever you're cooking, the liquid, whatever has liquid on it is what's going to cook. So you can't put spinach in alone. You would have to add a little bit of water. And that little bit of water creates steam that then cooks the rest of it. And that's why you use so little liquid to heat up something like that amount of food. And so you're preserving the nutrients that way. So the proper way to use or to cook food in the microwave, I would say, is always just to make sure you have a little bit of water in there to help cook the food, else you're just going to burn it.
That makes sense. Thank you.
And the other thing about the microwaving, because I just saw that they're damaging the food nutrients, the reason why they say it doesn't is because of how quickly you cook it. And so because of the speed of which you're cooking, you actually don't lose as much of the nutrients.
Yeah, and it's over a lot of different foods. So yeah, I think, you know, in eating healthy foods, I just always tell people just eat them. It doesn't matter what you do, just eat them. It's still going to be highly, highly beneficial. So whatever makes it easiest to get them in, do that.
Yeah. Somebody intolerant to tofu, any suggestions for that? No, I don't have any for that.
On that one, I would say, like, you know, sometimes when we're intolerant to foods, it's because we have our microbiome isn't ready to support it. And if you've taken it, like, if you want to start getting your system used to it, I would just start very small doses and then see over time if you can build a tolerance. And you might never be tolerant fully to it, but you might be able to have a little bit of it and increase that amount over time, if it's a food you like.
And then cooking rice in excess water, do you drain it after? I would say so. The water from rice that's cooked, is that okay to use? I don't see anything wrong with that.
And for me, you know, you want to be really careful with where your rice is grown.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. So
Yeah.
particularly a lot of our rice in the US is grown in the South, which has a lot of arsenic, because we used to do tobacco and part of the pesticides and everything we used. So, but it's in many, many locations, but particularly rice grown in the South. And so that's why I was recommending excess water. And it's often recommended to do 5 times as much water as rice, and then throw that out because the arsenic will come out in the water. Not all of it, but a good percentage can.
Interesting. Well, again, thank you, everyone. And we'll see you next month, hopefully. And we'll post this up so that everyone can see it. And so thank you again for Dr. Bonsall and everybody else for joining us.
Thank you.